Long
And
time, long time no see.
very long time.
How's it going?
Really well. Thank you. Yeah.
Where are you right now?
I'm in my wife's little studio in the backyard of our house.
Cool. In London or?
Yeah. In London.
Cool. I'm really happy to see you. It's been a while.
I think maybe it was at a gig in London the last time I saw you. It's a long time. Possibly we were evergreen.
I'm not sure. I'm not too sure, but I know it was at a gig. I'm not sure.
Yes. Too long.
Too long, way too long. So first of
Of
all, thank you for doing this. I've been doing
course.
series of interviews with people that I consider to have some sort of influence in the music industry, and obviously you're definitely one of them. So first of all, can you just like for those who don't know you, if you can just give a little background about yourself and your story and who's Rafe?
Yeah. I am Rafe, and I'm American by birth, Chicago, bopped around America for a bit, and then just wanted to live somewhere else. And that somewhere else is London, managed to find a job here. I've worked for years in marketing and innovation for some big companies and got tired of working for a big company and eventually started a small company focused on secret pop-up gigs in houses and other intimate spaces in London. And it spread over the years, and it's called Sofar Sounds. And that has been my contribution in a small way in music. I'm a family guy as well with two kids and two dogs and one wife. And that's 30 seconds.
That's pretty fast. That's a very quick 30 seconds for someone who's done quite a lot. Let's
Ah,
among the quite a lot of things you've done, which I wouldn't mind go if you don't mind going into, is so you worked at Disney,
hmm,
worked at Coca-Cola, and then you worked at Diageo.
yes.
I don't know if that's the right order, but
Yeah.
how did you end up there in those positions? Like, what was the starting point for you to become, a director in those positions? And what was it? What was it like, by the way, working for those companies?
Coming out of school, where I majored in English literature and politics, I, like many students, wasn't sure where that was going to go. So I managed to get a graduate degree studying marketing and advertising. And before those big companies, I then left Chicago by myself, basically, to go to New York, just because it seemed exciting. And I think we all have dreams and we all want to live somewhere new. And so I moved to New York and got a job in advertising. Did that for about 6 years and was tired of working for someone else's product, if that makes sense. It's exciting, but you're building something for someone else and giving them a small slice of that. And I felt that that wasn't really enough. And I just felt I wanted to be on the other side where it was my product in some way that I was creating something for. And my boss left and went to Disney. And a year later, he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I've got an opening. You want to work for me again? You want to put up with me again?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, Chris." Yeah, I did. And that was incredible. And so I joined Disney in New York. They had a small office. Then we moved to LA. Disney was a really exciting company. It's a magic factory. And anyone who's been to Disneyland or Disney World or you know, created or seen the creation of the products or anything is kind of you fall in love with it as a kid, especially. And my job was to keep that love affair going even when you were an adult and create some more sophisticated products with the what we call the licensed merchandise, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Goofy, Pluto. And that was the exciting part. The difficult part was it was really political. We were in Hollywood at that time, and big companies, I don't know if anyone who's going to listen to this has worked for a big company, but they can get really political, and you watch yourself. The knives are out sometimes, and sometimes you're not working on the business, you're working on protecting yourself within the company. So in the Magic Factory, there was some difficulty, but overall, I enjoyed it. I then left to go to Coca-Cola, where I went to be part of an organization that was creating new products and from scratch. And that was really exciting. Like, what's next after Coca-Cola and Sprite and those others? So that was a chance to be more on the development side rather than marketing, say, a Mickey Mouse t-shirt or a film that's already done. That was in Atlanta, and I don't know if anyone's ever been to the American South. It is another universe. So that it's so different. It's like New York, LA, Atlanta, mind blown. And that was kind of exciting. So I went there for a while. And then I was ready to move to another country. And really wasn't looking, but Diageo, a drinks company, recruited me and said, "Hey, you want to come to London?" And I'm like, do I want to come to London? You know, maybe the best city in the world. So that brought me to Diageo, which was a good balance between Disney, the Magic Factory, really creative, Coke, very serious. Everyone wore a suit to work, which I always thought was funny because we were selling sugar water. Why do you have to dress up, right? But we did. Diageo was somewhere in between. You know, it was creative, but not as crazy as Disney and less formal than Coke.
When you left Diageo, especially, so was it immediately you left Diageo and then started Sofar Sounds, or was Sounds starting while you were at Diageo and then you left?
I had the idea, but I didn't actually start it till after I left. And that was because it's easier to start a company when you're freelancing. So I had, you know, my own business after Diageo where I didn't have to work every day on the for the big company. So you can flex your hours.
Okay, so when I know you've probably told the story a gazillion times, you tell it again for how you started Sofar Sounds, which has turned out to be what it is today.
Yeah, I was at a gig, and anyone who likes music and has enjoyed it in a smaller venue, you realize that sometimes it's not a nice atmosphere for live music. And that was happening on this night. It was full of people who were talking in London, and it was full of people who were drinking. And the drinking was going on while the band was playing, and the bar was open, and people had their mobiles out, you know, taking pictures, and it was just everything not about the music. And I had come with one friend and actually met a new friend right there. And the three of us sort of said, "This is not okay. Let's go create something different." And one of the three of us was a musician at the time. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be the first musician." So we reacted to a not so good experience and said, music should be consumed with respect. We should listen and take it in. Like when we go to a movie or ballet or opera, why should sort of the gig experience and pop music, rock music, indie music, folk music be battling with all these distractions? So we had a gig a few weeks later in a house, told everyone to shut up and just be in the moment, not drink.
Was the name already given? Was or not yet?
No, no, it was just gig in a living room, you know, and we invented the name months later.
Okay, so there was a series before that, before the name came
Yeah,
about.
yeah, we retrofitted it and just said they were all Sofar Sounds,
Oh,
but it was the same concept, just without a name, because we didn't think we'd do more than one or two.
okay, okay. And when you look back at it today, did you ever imagine it would become what it's become in any way, shape, or form? Like, heard from the initial point you started, where you were just solving a problem,
Yeah,
becoming a worldwide phenomenon. Did you think that?
yeah, that's a great question. I think we had a little pieces of it early when we said things like joking, "Hey, one day we'll get Bono to play, and wouldn't that be cool?" And then my co-founder, who was around for about a year, Dave, one of the co-founders, he said, "Well, no, we shouldn't get Bono. Maybe we should get someone who could become Bono, and we can help them pursue their dreams." Because even though it's easier to be a musician because of technology, it's harder. And you have so many other things to compete with online and playing gigs and everything. So could we cut through it and be like a recommendation for new music? So we did dream like, hey, one day maybe someone can get their career launched because we're helping them get new fans when they need it most.
Okay. And what would you say now, looking back, has been one of the success stories of someone who just suddenly blew up after? So I know there are many, but
Yeah.
that stood out for you, if you could name just a few that blew up from after.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first saw Bastille, a UK-based band. They were unknown. They played down the street from where I'm talking to you in North London. And you could tell something exciting was happening because people started singing along to some of their songs that they'd never heard before. And there was a little bit of a feeling in the air that this is a really special band. And also, there was someone from the BBC, from Radio 1 there, who discovered them on the night and got them their first play on the radio. And that was also, something tangible that happened. So that was cool. And then an American artist called Leon Bridges, he played in Dallas and he had no video, no content. And we got him his first video. And, it was like we blinked and all of a sudden he was playing the White House. So, we really helped him along in a small way, but in a meaningful way. So those would be two examples. A much more famous example, even, that we didn't really help a lot, but it was nice that one of her first concerts ever was Billie Eilish. It
Really?
might have literally been her first. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. An unknown 14-year-old playing, getting a little bit of buzz, had one song that was doing well. Yeah. Now, I would never take credit for her explosion, but I would say that it was meaningful early in her career to play a Sofar gig.
Cool. I'll put the link down in the description of those three for people to watch. And today, how many cities how many cities active so far?
Yeah, well, 0 today because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but in theory, it's north of 300 and it depends on the month and growing, still growing.
Uh, so far today, initially it started off initially as kind of a hobby sort of thing, and then it became a company, and then now you have investors involved. I wanted to ask, like, what was the turning point for you from when it went from being a hobby to becoming a job to becoming a company with investors and so on? What was that turning point?
It just got too busy to be a hobby. So keeping up with this thing that we were doing out of pure love, not paying ourselves, not charging anyone, all of a sudden was between 10 and 20 hours a week. And then I was freelancing, as I mentioned earlier, and I couldn't sustain that with a small, family. So I had to find a way to pay myself something. And this very small team we had, that was definitely a turning point when we had to decide between becoming a charity or some sort of business. We realized it'd be best for the artist to be a business because we could grow faster and control our own destiny, not always have to ask for money. So that was about 5 years in. And that's when we started asking for tickets, but also more importantly, we asked for angel investors to support it with a small amount of money.
And I wanted to ask how easy or difficult was it to find angel investors or investors? And what was the approach when you did it? Was it something you put out there publicly and then you got them coming in, or were you going after them and knocking at their door?
We were knocking at their door. And you find with angel investors, you just need one or two, and then the rest follow. But they have to be leaders in that community. So we had an advisor who invested a small amount of money, and his name was Joe. And Joe was really helpful in introducing us to others who could invest. And there was one in particular who other people knew. And that was hard, but when we convinced the one known angel, it unlocked 10 others coming, because they're like, oh, if such and such is doing this, then it must be good for me. But to get the first one or two was super hard. I find that they follow each other, and that some of this is just based on them respecting the other name who has made good investments in the past, which is funny because it had nothing to do with the likelihood of us succeeding. And that early on, most people invest expecting to lose it all. So you have to be like, okay, $10,000, you made it, you can spare that money. It's for some of us, the rest of us, like, a coffee for them. And just go for it because you fall in love with what someone, in our case, what we're doing.
Okay, yeah. And so today, for people who aren't aware of it, how does the formula work for Sofar, for artists and for people who organize? So I know there's what you call full-time cities. I know that there are ambassador cities. I'm going to give a special shout out to Maria, who handles the Beirut city. So far here, I did a few of the first ones, but it was so sporadic and so spaced out. There was no way I could do anywhere near the job that she's doing, which is unbelievable. So big shout out to her for the amazing work she's done. And I wanted to see, how do you decide on what you consider a full-time city and what you consider an ambassador location?
So yeah, I agree with you about Maria being so strong, and also thank you because you did start it there, and that is not easy either. So between the two of you, and it works the same in Beirut as other places, the various people who are leading, like a Maria, are spreading the word in their community, getting an artist to play for a small audience. You're either charging money for a ticket or asking people to donate something in most countries. And then a cut of it goes to the artist. And ideally, they get lots of new fans because everyone's in the moment and focusing and hopefully following them on whatever platforms they're on. In some cases, we end up making a video, and the video is then another way to spread the word. We make some money from the ticket sales and some money from partnerships where we do them. YouTube, we make basically nothing, but those are the three ways that we do something. And then a full-time city just means that there's been such demand that we've been able to grow it and incorporate in that country. That would be the US, for example, or Canada or UK.
Yeah.
And we can then pay a salary to the leader there.
Okay.
And they can do lots of them. Like literally in some cities, we're doing more than one a night. And then the ambassador city is just in a country, like Lebanon, where we haven't gotten to yet, haven't had the money or the demand to incorporate, but someone does it for the love of it, like I started it. Yeah. And that's usually once a month, light touch for fun. But we also try to pay the artists from what comes in those ambassador cities and countries.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty simple construct. Anyone can play. They have to apply in their city. It has to be approved by a listening committee. And then once they get through, if they want to play, it's usually stripped back because it's less than 100 people normally.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And you guys have had a lot of collaborations, be it with brands or with associations or with charities. Which one is? I know you guys did it's called Give a Home.
Yes.
Tell me more about that, because that was something that really had a profound impact on the cause itself. So how did that come about? And yeah, how did it work out for you guys?
Most of the people leading cities are really interested in supporting their communities. And so you see events that support pride or support climate change initiatives, or an organization in the US that's helping get people back into education who have not had the opportunity. There's so many. But in this case, we heard from many cities that a few years ago, the refugee crisis that was affecting especially Syria and some other countries around that area of the world was having a profound effect on everybody. Everyone felt like they needed to help. And so we heard it from so many cities. We're like, let's instead of focusing on one city, let's bring the world together. And so we offered every city a chance with Amnesty International to put on a gig on the same night, raise as much money as we could, and also awareness so that we could give it 100% to Amnesty. And that happened. We had nearly 300 gigs. We had everyone from Ed Sheeran play in Washington, D.C., to a band called The National in Scotland, to Leanne LaHavis in Tokyo, to literally 200 other acts Bastille, who people might have heard of. It was incredible. But what was most incredible is how our community pulled together. And we all felt like we were one world on the same night. And we raised hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for the charity and got millions and millions of people involved, wanting to support Amnesty. So it was beautiful. It was a huge success. It nearly broke the company. Just, I mean, not financially, just, oh my God, that sort of initiative was a lot of work, more than we expected, but we loved it. We didn't get much sleep that month, but we loved it.
And you did something similar now with the COVID-19, where you raised money as well. And what was that for, and how was the approach for that one?
So when COVID hit, we focused the whole company on supporting artists. We put out live streams within 2 weeks, which were there to support artists from around the world, playing every single night. We've done now over 100, all the money going to the artists. We created an artist relief fund to support as many artists as that we know that we could, especially the ones who are really struggling, of which there are so many, but that we had to start somewhere. And that money that we raised, which is tens of thousands of dollars and counting, then is there to support those musicians who might not be able to pay the rent or afford food or be supported by their local government because they didn't have a normal full-time job. So those have been very powerful. We've also given free webinars, which we are using as a chance to educate artists while the world has stopped, like how to get on a Spotify playlist, or how to set up a home recording studio, or when things get back to normal, how to tour, and getting educators, professionals, well-known musicians, all sorts of things to come and advise them, where we put it up on a free webinar, and we've had thousands of people artists exposed to this. So collectively, we focused the company on helping those who need it most.
All right. And if right now, given the circumstances and the context today of what's happened, what do you see as the future of live music, in your opinion? And what's the future for Sofar, short, medium, and long term? If you had to just throw out right now, knowing that obviously the context can change between this week and next week. So, but right now, like today, what would you feel is happening for live music and for you guys at Sofar?
Yeah. So while this is a great pause and a tragedy, I also see opportunity. And I think both for Sofar and live music, you're going to probably see hybrid models coming up that would never have happened or would have taken a lot longer, where you can play a live event and do a live stream. You can do them together. You can do them in partnership. You can do virtual tours. You can do real tours when we get back to playing live events. And so I think this thought of the much more interconnectedness of the online experience and the real life experience, I think will happen. I think people have to figure out how to make them complementary so that when you're watching online, you experience something that you can't experience in real life. For example, zooming around the world and hearing 3 or 4 musicians from 3 or 4 different countries, which you couldn't do in real life unless there was great expense. But you could do this all the time. So that's something online that you couldn't do in real life. And then we all know in real life that magic is impossible to replicate on a web experience. So they both have a place, but I think they'll come together closer. I think, and I hope that there'll be more opportunities for artists to make money through music, not just because of what's happening now, but because they've created new experiences and they can see new ways, whether it's a company like Patreon or Kickstarter or other initiatives that pay them, and just being clever about that, or whether they're creating music for other areas of the world that they didn't think about, because now we're so much more global. Here I am in the UK talking to you in Lebanon, assuming you're there. Okay, I mean, that's pretty crazy cool. So I think we're going to think, I hope, more globally in terms of music. So far in the short term, it's been very difficult. We have no money coming in, so we've had to rely on money we had saved from investment rounds, which is very nice that we had that soft landing, but we've had to also cut expenses. So short term, it's super difficult. And that's why we've been uplifted by supporting musicians and giving ourselves something to do, and furloughed people, and hopefully we'll be able to bring as many people back as possible. Midterm, I think you'll get into what I just said about all these new innovations and hybrid models. We also have 2 or 3 new things that we're creating in this down period that will be, I hope, a big up for us later, so that we'll offer more opportunities for artists to make money and do more things and be more innovative in our space. Long term, I think it's going to be amazing. And long term, I think we'll be better than we were even before COVID, because of what I just said about having the time to think through things, the time to have a better model, the time to support artists in different ways and innovate. And long term, I think instead of helping 20 to 30,000 musicians a year, I think we'll be supporting hundreds of thousands of musicians a year, because we'll use the internet more cleverly, because we'll get back to growing, because people will yearn for live music. I think that we will touch the lives of ultimately millions of musicians. And when I say touch, I mean make them real money, help them sustain their careers, help them stay in music. If they want to become better known, help them become more famous. Still, we're on the younger sort of discovery end of it, but I think we'll be able to stay on that journey a little bit longer as well and make a meaningful impact on many, many careers long term.
Yeah, I hope that's the case.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see, like you, a lot of opportunity from this, even though it's doom and gloom at the moment, but I do feel a lot of opportunity that's starting to arise and starting to show its face now. And which, if you had to give some advice to artists today, because they're in a whole mindset of, they can't see the way out and things are looking difficult, and they might not feel very comfortable putting out content or being in front of a camera on Zoom or whatever. What would you say right now is vital advice for artists in this period that would be extremely relevant 1 year from now?
I mean, first, the sense of hope. I think that we'll get through this. Everyone goes through crises. In a way, this one is somehow easier to cope because everyone's in it together. And so you have a lot of support. It's been one giant pause. So I think looking ahead a year and looking at how we will get out of this, and knowing that we will, and thinking positively, is super helpful for just mentally, as well as just forcing yourself to think where things can go. I think secondly, creating. You've got all this downtime. You're not playing gigs, but you can be creative and you can make stuff and you can write your next song and you can use the pain and suffering and difficulty from the world at large and inject that into your music. Or if you think more positively, inject that into your music. So there's a lot of material now. I know one person in Norway, for example, who's already written 2 albums, and he said they're the best albums he's ever written, and recorded them, by the way. So you know we can record things for cheap. He did it for very little money, and it sounds good. So I think that second thing is around being creative and being creative now. I think third, looking for things like Sofar is offering education. How can you take what you don't know about music and what you don't know about your craft and learn? There's so many free resources out there. I think next, look for government funding where you can find it. And there should be lists out there in most countries. I know we published a list for starters for America, but every country will have some sort of support. And if you can find it, even better. Maybe there's support outside your own home country. And then I would say find your own close network of people who can help you and give you advice. So don't just sit, you know, with your hands in your head or your head in the sand. Get out there and make sure that the few people you know who inspire and think positively are there, and you're talking to them to keep your spirits up.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I think it's crucial, and I think like you know, I say obviously the mindset's super important, and I'm a big advocate of creating a lot of content now, even if it's not necessarily good. And by content, I don't mean necessarily music, but just putting yourself out there to your audience and to new audiences, reaching out to different platforms. People are more responsive nowadays and
Yes.
willing to collaborate on new projects and with new artists. So I'm 100% with you on that. And looking back now, Sofar is now 11 years old, is it?
Yes, that's right.
Uh, if you could change things given your past, and if you could improve things on the current format of Sofar, what would it be? Like, what were the things you feel like you messed up on as Sofar that you feel like I wish I knew that back then, and then to improve on the way it is today?
I would have communicated much more clearly to artists and the community around them how the money worked with Sofar. We've always been, you know, losing money and trying to keep things right. But when we grew, people made assumptions that we were getting rich off this and that. Not a lot of people. It was usually people outside our community. But I don't think we were as good as we could have been about that communication, about who we were and how we ran. I mean, maybe even bringing better people in to help communicate that message. And especially after we raised some money, people again make assumptions that some were right and we had to grow there, but many were wrong. So I think that the skill of communicating who we were in a clearer way than we did earlier on would have been very useful. I think just to take a current message around diversity, we are pretty diverse in many ways. We're also not diverse in many ways. And I think being as inclusive as possible, which we are mentally, but actually acting earlier on some things, I think would have helped us make sure that we're as diverse as possible community, both inside the company as well as the fans who come and enjoy Sofar. So I think that we're making changes in both those areas so we can be better, but I think we could have fixed them earlier, or at least communicated who we were far earlier.
Okay. There's a movement I'm sure you've heard of called Key Change, and it's about 50-50 gender balance in terms of people working in the industry and in terms of lineups. And it's something that I can't well I feel I'm an ally for it, but it's something I will hopefully have an impact with, at least in the things I work with. And I wanted to know your opinion on that. When you mean diversity, do you mean it in terms of whether it's people's nationality or skin color or gender? Is that what you mean in terms of diversity?
Diversity is everything. It's everything you said, but it's also age.
Maybe.
It's every possible way. I think the world is a better place when we bring people together who are completely different from each other, but they share a feeling of mission and their values are similar. I think companies are better. I think the human race is better. If you take off, the cap of looking at nation states, which is a more recent invention, I wish the world was borderless and we were all sort of one nation and we treated each other with the same respect. That may not happen in my lifetime or ever, but diversity is looking at the entire planet and thinking of all the ways that we can come together. But it also means some of the ways, like where people of color are clearly not being treated right, and there's some obvious things that can be solved along that path as well that haven't been right for a long time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that now is, a turning point for all societies. There's more of a microscopic view on these topics, whether it's women in the music industry or whether it's, people of color or things of that sort. So yeah, I hope we can all contribute to that. I'm not going to take more of your time, Rafe. I'm just going to thank you again so much for doing this. I again do want to take the time to give another shout out to Maria, who is doing an unbelievable job in Beirut. And I hope that one day you'll be able to come to Beirut and attend one of the shows she organizes here, which are special places of really special bands. And I hope we'll be able to meet up again very, very soon. And thank you for everything you're doing for music industry, for musicians everywhere, because I mean, even when I look back at how I discovered so far, it was through musicians in the UK, guys, and you talked about what you were doing. And I still feel that because it does have a startup feel to it, that it's still at its beginning phase. So I feel that there's a long way to go still, which is great.
Agreed, Anthony. We do feel like we've come a long way, but have a much longer path to go. And that's exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you again. It was great speaking to you, and I really hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. You have a beautiful day. See you soon, hopefully in real life.
Bye.
Bye.